All right, so now we're going to start talking about some of the ways to actually solo over this tune. We've learned a lot of the theory. We've definitely learned what Dorian is and how to play some chords, how to play some different fourths voicings. So now what we really have to get into is how the right hand can manipulate some of the things that are found in this scale. So a really great first place to start is by looking at this scale, D Dorian. And again, we're looking at everything in D Dorian for now. It is the majority of the tune, but that's only because we don't have time to go through E flat to the extent that we're using D. But it's just as important, and it's just as applicable to E flat Dorian as it would be to any other Dorian. So this is something you really should practice. Maybe not in all 12 keys. That might be a little tedious, but a lot of the minor mode songs that you'll see, written in D, written in C minor, F minor, G minor, places like that would be a good place to practice all of these concepts in those really commonly called keys. So as we look at now how to solo over this, the first place to start is let's look at the scale, D Dorian, and take these little triadic chunks that we can take out of it. So if we put thirds over every degree of the scale, we're going to end up with these triad structures that go all the way up the scale. Okay? So in practicing them, we can play them as triads, as chords. But more often than not, we're going to be breaking them up, right? We're going to be, if we're playing a solo, we're going to be breaking up those triads. Okay, so the first thing I'd practice to kind of get familiar with all the different shapes that are inherent in this D Dorian scale is playing some of those triads. And just as an exercise to kind of get them under your fingers, I'd practice playing them with your left hand accompaniment. So get that left hand thing going, very slow tempo to start, and let's just play some triads over it, going up the scale. And then down. All right? Really basic. Pretty easy. As you get better at it, as you get more familiar with them, practice going a little bit faster. That left hand thing going again. And down. All right, now just like we can practice the triads, we can also practice the sevenths. So if we build seventh chords, adding the seventh, on all these triads, we're going to have these seventh chord structures going all the way up the D Dorian scale. Okay, so let's just practice a little bit of that. Get our left hand going. We're going to practice outlining all those seventh chords. And then going down. Okay, so this gets a little tedious, right? So we have two patterns that we can practice, and those two patterns are, just to re-examine them quickly, are this seventh one that we just did. We'll call this pattern number 1. And the same thing going down. And we have the triadic one. We'll call that pattern number 2, okay? Now, the triadic one, honestly, I like to practice that inverted, because here's why. That triad sounds like a triad. If we invert it, we kind of get that fourth interval that we were kind of talking about that we liked before, right? So we get that fourth in there. So I honestly like to practice it inverted here like this. So what is it really? It's going to be third. The first interval will be a third, and then a fourth. And that shape, again, goes all the way through D Dorian and E flat Dorian, don't forget. And then practicing that down. Okay, now that's the first place, and there has to be a certain amount of this kind of practicing to get it under your fingers. I know it's a little dry, it's a little tedious, but if you have it learned, if you have it mastered, you will start to see all these different chord shapes that are part of D Dorian. So for example, you can see that there's like an A minor 7 chord inherent in D Dorian. You can see that there's a G dominant chord inherent in D Dorian, an F major 7 chord inherent in D Dorian. So you start to see these shapes. And the reason why that's important is because it helps you, as you're playing a solo, to kind of be savvy, to understand that you have all these different chord structures that are all part of the same harmony. All right? But again, playing them like we just went through is more of an exercise than an actual solo. So let's talk about some ways to turn those exercises, to turn these shapes, these chord shapes, into something that might be more interesting to play as part of a solo. The first thing I would practice is changing directions. So I would go up one of the seventh chords, and then down the next one. So if we played them in succession, it would be, right? But if we're going to constantly change direction, it will sound like this. And let's get our left hand going. I'm going to practice, while I'm doing this, I'm going to practice playing some of those more modern sounding fourths voicings. So my left hand's just going to jump to that shape. Okay, to kind of get those fourths sounding in the left hand. And I'll play this up the octave so you can kind of see on the virtual keyboard and also hear what the switching the directions on the 7th chord sounds like. So start at a slow tempo, right? And then practice going down. Oops, sorry. And so on and so forth. Now, just so that everyone gets a chance to kind of see what the fingering is, I kind of go back and forth depending on, what set of circumstances I'm playing this in. If I'm playing it in a lesson like this, just kind of demonstrating, you can kind of see how I'm just going, using this 1, 2, 3, 5 fingering on every shape. Even if I was going and switching directions. Now, the other way I kind of do it is to kind of carve out a fingering that feels more linear, more like, a line that has a direction to it. So in that sense, I was kind of using 5, 3, 2, 1, and then kind of crossing under, right? 2, 1, 2, 4. And I was just kind of finding a way to have all my fingers navigating